All right.
Here we are, man. We are live, 2 o'clock show on Ward Wrestling Live. We got another one, Wrestling Nation, and this one is going to be really, really amazing. We have one of USA's national recruiters. He's with NCAA, I believe is the company, correct?
Yep.
And he is a national recruiter in our country, has over 1,900 athletes that he represents, so he knows what he's talking about. But not only that, he's not just a recruiter. He was a pretty damn good wrestler, qualified 3 times at Northwestern for the NCAAs, and also won a Ohio State championship 3 times, which is not easy to do. He's here with us, and he's going to give us some good advice on what our kids should be doing. He's also going to talk about the national landscape of wrestling, tournaments, delays, whatever. Hey, sir, thank you for coming on, Mr. Pariano. I do really appreciate this, and man, the floor is yours.
Well, call me Drew.
Drew, okay.
And it's great to be on. You know, I've watched pieces of your other interviews. We're really busy here at NCSA. I would watch them in their entirety, maybe over the weekend. That would be great. But yeah, I mean, you know, there's been some big developments here recently. Fargo did get canceled, which, you know, with all the health guidelines, I think we kind of knew that was coming. Not that we're excited about that, but we just have to move on. We have to focus on tournaments like Super 32 and preseason nationals and some other major events where you can get noticed by coaches. And, you know, the other thing is the recruiting deadlines through the NCAA actually got moved back to July 31st, but there's so many ways to combat that. I mean, college coaches are getting amazing at Zoom room calls like we're doing right now. You know, they're having group coaching sessions, one-on-one sessions with your parents. You know, they're just getting very, you know, crafty with how they're going over recruiting right now. And there's a lot of, you know, virtual tours and, you know, they'll show you the wrestling facility, but, you know, hopefully August 1st, we get back to normal and, you know, the juniors or the 2021 class can get back on campuses and do the whole recruiting spiel that we're all, you know, that we're all used to.
Yeah, that'll be really good. And it's been really nice getting to meet all these coaches out there and all these wrestlers. And not only, I mean, one reason is, I mean, all these kids get to meet maybe their future coach. And also there's kids out there right now that are wrestling for these coaches that I've spoke to as well. And they're able to get that kind of aspect of it for a kid that is in the same spot they were a couple of years ago, be able to say, hey man, I like this guy, I like recruiting, or I like wrestling for him. So, I mean, what's the current landscape right now of recruiting, Drew?
Well, I mean, we're talking about the dates, how they've kind of been altered a little bit. But I mean, right now, there's 431 college wrestling programs nationwide, 79 in Division I. I think we're looking at 68 in Division II, 118 Division III, 74 NAI. And then it depends how you count it with junior college. There's 42 junior college programs nationwide, but California has their own division and there's about 25, 26 schools in there. So, I mean, there's a huge variety of schools to choose from, right? And you don't have to just look at D1s or D2s. I mean, you can look at everything. I mean, we were just talking about Kaiser, you know, they're building their program right now, NAI program down in South Florida. And I truly believe that Kaiser was, at least in part, a catalyst for St. Thomas to start a wrestling program. And I think we would both agree, Daniel, that Florida needs wrestling. I mean, they need college programs. We can hypothesize all day, like we would love to see a program at UCF. You know, I'm not a guy that's like, oh yeah, Miami's going to have a program tomorrow. That's not going to happen, right? But I could see a school like UCF, who has a strong club team, or Tampa, whose club team has evolved significantly recently. You know, I could see those programs down the road, like developing Division I programs. In the current landscape with COVID, you know, we're just going to have to hold off a little bit, you know, when we're talking about developing new programs. However, I mean, it's been going on. There's been 4 or 5 women's programs added during COVID, and there's actually been a couple men's programs still added during COVID. So wrestling's strong, man. Like we're a strong group. We band together, and if you even dare to try to drop one of our programs, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And man, to hear those numbers, let me make sure I wrote these down right. 431 wrestling programs, 79 in one, 68 in D2, 118 in D3, 79 in the NAIA, and then 25 in the Cali JUCO, and then another 42 in JUCO nationwide. So, yep. Wow, talk about opportunities to wrestle in college and get an education. That's unbelievable. Thank you for those numbers, man. That's going to help me a lot when I'm talking to people. I really appreciate that. So what does a student athlete need to be doing right now, sir, Drew, to make sure that they're on that radar and they can get recruited?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just reaching out to the coaches, right? Like they're at home just like you and I are, Daniel. Like they're actually sitting in front of their computers. You know, some of them are doing great things with like doing technique in their basement, like Chris Ayers at Princeton's doing that. I'm sure Colat's doing some technique somewhere, right? Yeah, I mean, they're here right now. And so with the recruiting guidelines, like extending to July 31st, they are going to be able to observe student athletes come back on campus. So that was something new June 1st. So existing guys can go back to their teams, go in the weight room. I don't know about the CDC like stipulations on getting in the wrestling room, but they are starting to loosen some of those issues.
So that's as of June 1st, right?
That is, yes. So current student athletes can be there, but the coaches are still, you know, they're going to be limited as to the contact that they have even with their student athletes, which means they're going to be spending more time recruiting. So right now, I mean, get your film together from the season, and you have all this time now. You know, most of the guys I work with are out of school, other than New York, where they got 3 more weeks. So you guys in Florida should enjoy the fact that you're already almost done. Yeah, like getting your video together, like starting your own YouTube channel. You know, there's so many things that you can do to direct coaches your way. Get your transcripts from your high school or your report cards so that you have that readily available. When you email a coach, attach your transcript to the email. You put it right in front of them, you know, and just give them as much information as you can, because there is that saying, you know, first impressions are important. And I do truly believe that. And so, yes, maybe we're not training for Fargo right now, but you have to put it in your mind that you're already training for Super 32. You're already training for preseason nationals. You're already training. I know there's a couple states, Ben Askren was saying that Wisconsin is still going to go through with their state freestyle and Greco tournaments in August. So like they have something to look forward to, right? And I wouldn't be so surprised if they allow maybe bordering states to join that freestyle tournament and make it more of a regional tournament. So, you know, there's always something to look forward to, right? I put it this way, Daniel. If a coach decides, well, there's all this COVID stuff going on, so I'm just not going to recruit. In 2 years, their program is not going to be very good. They're going to have a team with juniors and seniors and no stud freshmen and sophomores. So recruiting will not end. Like that is one certainty. Like it cannot end.
Yeah. So I wrote down, that's so whoever's out there listening, parents, kids, I'm here with Drew Pariano, one of our national wrestling recruiters here in the country. He represents over 1,954 athletes right now that are looking at college. So he mentioned just make sure you get your film and video together, have it prepared for your coaches, and make sure you always have your transcripts on hand, whether it's on your laptop, on your phone docs, wherever they might be, so that whenever you come across these coaches or you're communicating with them somehow, you're able to have that video and have that transcript ready for them. So Great information there. And when is recruiting open right now? Is it live? Can you recruit right now, or what's going on?
So that's a great question. So it's a really exciting time for all the guys and girls that just finished sophomore year, because as of June 15th, and this has nothing to do with COVID, Division I, Division II coaches, all the restrictions will go away on June 15th. So that means they can email you, they can call you, they can text you, they can Zoom room with you. If you have a profile with a certain recruiting company, they can look at that, they can respond. So that's for D1, D2. D3 coaches and NAI coaches, they can contact you at any point. So even freshmen and sophomores, they can contact you. The only thing that is a little bit of a holdback is, again, until July 31st, no official or unofficial visits on campus. So that June 15th date is going to be really important for those who just finished their sophomore year. And I also think that's a great time to get into recruiting. Like, when you're talking about some of these, high-level D1 guys, they get on you really early. When I was coaching at Northwestern, we did a camp at Christian Brothers Academy, and that was the first time we saw Sebastian Rivera, and he was 15 years old, probably 107 pounds soaking wet, maybe a little lighter actually. And that was the first time we saw him. And then we did a camp at Legacy High School in Colorado, and we saw Ryan Deacon when he was only a freshman. So like going to camps and clinics, those are great ways to get noticed by college coaches. And I do know that the camp and clinic scene, this summer got a little beat up with COVID, but they're still out there. I know you talked to Connor Beebe, like he's still having a camp in Tampa. There's a school out in Utah where, fingers crossed, we're hoping that they go either D2 or D1. It's called Dixie State. They're still having their wrestling camp. So I have guys I'm talking to from California, Arizona, and they're like, yeah, man, I'm going up to Dixie State. And I'm like, have you ever been there? They're like, no, man, but they have a wrestling camp, so I'm going. So, as wrestlers, you're going to seek out those opportunities. But I'm really hopeful that by the fall, things are really going to go back to normal.
And that's awesome. I wanted to ask you something. We have a homegrown kid at your alma mater, and I got to speak to him. I got to speak to him on here, Mike DeAugustino. Talk a little bit about him, man. He was a young freshman this year, but he made some noise, right?
Oh yeah,
what's the upside to Mike?
Well, they just came out with the Amateur Wrestling News All Rookie team. He was number 1 at 125. And when you look at those things moving forward, when you look at the All Rookie team, actually Northwestern had 2. They had Davidson at 97 as well, 2 number 1s. Super impressive. And then the other thing I noticed was, like, an emerging D1 program like Northern Colorado, they had 3 guys on that team, and they only do the top 3 freshmen. So that, like, those are very indicative of where a program's going to go. But I didn't know that much about Mike. And then I started watching him online at Vegas, and I'm like, holy cow. And then you watch him at different tournaments, and then you watch him in duels, and you're like, this guy is an absolute stud. And then he had that, Sebastian Rivera moves to 33. You got one of the best, 1-2 punches in the country. And then they have a kid, Chris Cannon from Blair Academy, who's a 25-pounder, who was like 19-2 as a redshirt. Like, their lightweights right now are pretty darn good. I mean, and the other thing is Northwestern, I take no credit in this. They have realized that Florida has amazing wrestling, and they keep coming down there.
Yeah, and that goes to one of my questions here. I know first nationally, college wrestling nationally right now, the landscape, and then we'll get into how much you've seen the Southeast kind of grow with Florida. Yeah. But what's going on nationally right now? How is college wrestling looking? Are we through this? Are we through the troubled times where we can fear a program is going to get cut? Or
I feel like what happened a little bit recently was schools that were in financial trouble. McMurray College comes to mind, Urbana, and those are young wrestling programs. McMurray was actually dropped once. They brought it back, and I think they brought it back because they needed more students. They started a women's team as well. Urbana started a team just last year, but the school was in trouble. Programs like that, with the COVID situation, those are hard things to control, right? But I think the wrestling culture and how it's very unique and it's very just personal. Like people from California know people from Jersey, people from Iowa know people from PA. Like that's just the way the wrestling world is. I feel like we're pretty strong when we get a rumor that a program might be in trouble. I prefer to talk about more positive things. Like I like hearing rumors that Clemson is going to bring D1 wrestling back. I like hearing rumors that maybe,
Nice.
yeah, I like to hear rumors that like Slippery Rock might bring wrestling back. And I think we all know this. It all comes down to the almighty dollar. So the alumni at those programs probably need to post up some money. But no, I feel good at just in general about the wrestling culture and how we band together. When we know a program's in trouble, we can't save them all. It comes down to an administrator sometimes. Like sometimes, for whatever reason, that administrator doesn't respect the fact that, in my opinion, wrestling is the toughest sport in college by far. And maybe he or she, for whatever reason, doesn't totally like it. And then what you have to do is cultivate that relationship with the AD and make sure that he or she does like it. You bring them to a match and they're like, wow, this was fun. Like this one-on-one situation is amazing. It's no secret that the AD at North Carolina State, Debbie Yao, she loves wrestling. And so Pat Popolicio gets there, and what were they? Probably 30th, 40th in the country when he got there, and they've been in the top four. I mean, the athletic directors and the support you get from them is huge.
Yeah, I had Machiavello on, I had Jamel on, Morris, and those are two obviously NC State studs. And
I guarantee you that she's had personal conversations with them over and over again. Like, we love what you do for the school. Like, you're a great representative of North Carolina State.
Yeah, my son is at the First Academy, and it's a young program, only like 5 years old, so it doesn't get probably as much love as the other sports, right? Understandably, things are coming along, right? We're growing, but it was really amazing this year at the state tournament. The first day, TFA had their second state placer ever in the last 4 or 5 years. Second state qualifier, and then he ended up placing. And that first day, the athletic director was there, the head of school was there, the assistant head of school was there, and it was kind of their first time there. And you could really see them enjoying it, and it was really awesome to have them in the gym, kind of watching it. And I think it's really going to make a difference in the growth of TFA wrestling. So I was glad that they showed up and they watched it, and they're all good guys, but they do need to step up and help us, right?
Yeah, financially, obviously, but like when an athletic director, whether it's the head athletic director or the assistant athletic director, your sport director, when they go to like the NCAA tournament, or they go to Big Tens, or they go to a state tournament, like high school state tournament, they're blown away by the passion, by the fans, like that certain parts of the arena are like exploding because this mat is going into overtime on, mat 8, but then we got an overtime match on mat 1. Like, they're like, if they've never seen it, they're like, holy cow, this is amazing. I'm like, yeah, it's a little different than, and I love the sport of baseball, but it's a little different than going to a baseball game. Like, there's excitement all the time, in my opinion.
Yeah, like it's great. Even so, the the first 2 seasons, 7th and 8th grade, my wife maybe went to, I don't know, 1 or 2. She just couldn't do it. Watching her kid get
Of course.
in those pageants. Well, she went all year this year, and it was amazing watching how she reacted to things and how she wanted to. After a couple tournaments, she was kind of engulfed. You could see it starting to happen. You could see her. All of a sudden, she's crying when the other kid gets beat, or the other kid went. Like the emotions start coming, and then she was like, "Oh my God, did you see the move on mat number whatever?" And I'm like, "No, I'm watching this one." But she's just watching everything, and it was unbelievable. So Connor Beebe, one of the best recruiters I've ever worked with in the country. Connor Beebe, also a great boss and workout partner when I had no one else to beat up on.
Yeah, so I actually, Connor went through injuries, and yet he still trained, man. And he made the world team trials at least twice, and then once before he was even at Northwestern. It was hilarious. Like, we had all this office work to do, but like we wouldn't miss an opportunity to go down the room. And I feel like I knew how he wrestled, and so I could give him a good feel. I could act like I was a lot lighter than I was weight-wise when I wrestled him. But like, no, I mean, he's just technique was awesome. I just felt like if I was on the road recruiting, I could tell Connor, like, run the room. This is his coaching side, and like everything was exactly what I would have wanted, right? And the guys loved him, and he just, when you're an assistant coach, you're a friend, right? For the most part. When you're a head coach, you're the bad guy sometimes. And those are just roles that you get put in, and you don't love them, but and then now when I'm talking to kids down in Florida, like especially the Tampa area, because now it's fun, I get to talk to kids from all over the country, and if they're within 100 miles of Tampa, I'm like, Connor Beebe? They're like, yeah, well, we went to this or we went to that, and I was like, yeah, he loves promoting wrestling, and it's not about him, it's about the kids. 100%.
Yeah, I've gotta say, and I think he likes me. I got to meet him, and he came on the air, and then he's been on 2 times since then. I think 1 or twice. I think he's been on twice, maybe 3 times. And when I started this show, I didn't know many people, right? I knew just kind of the people that my son wrestles with. So I got to like my 3rd show, and I had some people on, and then I had Connor Beebe on. And I got to say, without Connor Beebe, I don't know where I'd be at right now with the show, because he then was on, and then he sent me Scotty sent this.
I knew you were going to say that.
And then he sent me the assistant coach at Michigan, UC Michigan. And then he sent me there's a guy, Lightning Luke Smith or whatever, out in California. Then he sent me Cutterly. Then he sent me, and then Sentis from that starts sending me those guys. So that like Sentis Connor Beebe thing, for me, kind of lit this whole thing on fire, because from those guys I got more guys, and from my hard work of texting and messaging people, I got more guys, and then it just kind of went from there. But Connor Beebe and Scotty Sentis have been just pivotal. Is that the word?
Oh yeah, and Scotty is a cool story, because obviously now he's the head coach at Campbell, and he's a Florida guy, and he and Connor were teammates at Central Michigan. Again, they were a 1-2 punch, both lightweights. So, as good of friends as they are now, they probably had some brawls in the wrestling room, I'm guessing. But yeah, I mean, that's how the wrestling world goes, like this guy knows this guy knows that guy. And, and that's just how we make these connections. And during this time, like it's important to have these type of sessions, because like outside of work, it's just good to talk about wrestling and keep it fresh. So.
Yeah. And I mean, they had like a wrestling match on my text messaging between the two of them. It's pretty funny. And then sends like, he calls out to all his teammates and they all send me videos of like talking about Connor Beebe having small hands, and they sent me this thing saying Connor Beebe sending back stuff about them. And I was like, okay, guys, when are you all coming on together so you can just do this on one film? But that was awesome. So talk about the Southeast and Florida, especially. How far have we come, and how far can we go?
Well, one of the things was obviously Southeastern was a great addition to college wrestling. Florida needed a college program. Southeastern stepped up. And for anybody that's ever seen their facility in person or online, it's absolutely insane. I heard the rumor that they hired the architect that did the Cornell wrestling room, and like, is that true, Daniel? Like, that's what I heard.
Yeah, so a friend of mine, his name is Mike Santani. He's now one of the associate ADs there. He spent over like 20 years with the Magic. And so I finally got to go to a wrestling match this year. And the first thing he said to me was, it's identical to the Cornell room.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that meant that the Cornell guy was involved or not, but that's what he said to me. Now, I haven't been to the Cornell room, but I have been to the SCU room for a quad, and it was a pleasure to be there. Yeah.
So I went. I mean, it's a practice and competition facility, but I've been to Cornell's room quite a few times now, and then I looked online and I was like, wow, these are like eerily similar. So like, beautiful facility, and I think when a program like that gets added, then then Kaiser steps up and they start their program in South Florida, and then St. Thomas. So now there's 3 programs, and I think that will be the catalyst for more. I would also like to see it evolve into a women's college wrestling program, right? And the other growth that you've seen is like Georgia, like 15 years ago, like it was kind of a travesty. Like Georgia State started wrestling, and then they dropped it like shortly thereafter, and I don't know all the reasons, but like that was a little upsetting. But then these NAIA programs and D2 programs like Bruton Parker and Life, and now Reinhardt is like really, really good. You're seeing just a lot of growth in Georgia, and then it started filtering to South Carolina. Now there's a school called Lander and Coker. Limestone's been around for a while, but like, you're seeing this growth in the Southeast. Super exciting for me, because as a college coach, who would not want to coach in good weather?
Yeah, and I love the Carolinas, Georgia. All those places are amazing. I think I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
Ooh, sorry, I felt that coming on. Cool. Well, that's all. I mean, amazing stuff. And thank you so much for that.
Yeah, there's great growth, but we have a ways to go. We really do. And but when one program adds, it facilitates another program. And like I was telling you right before we started the call, college programs should want to come down and wrestle Kaiser and St. Thomas because they're so close in proximity. And you're not just going down to South Florida and getting one duel in. You're getting 2 in at least, and like, then they'll probably be able to facilitate like a dual meet tournament or a quad at least. I mean, programs like to go down south to get out of that cold weather. So
yeah, so talk a little bit about the one thing I wanted to ask you now, off of recruiting. You were a 3-time NCAA qualifier at Northwestern. You also were a 3-time Ohio State champion. So not too bad yourself. What's your most memorable moment on the mat?
I was never happy with my own career, so I actually put that into coaching, and it wasn't even necessarily a national champ, which we were fortunate enough to have several at Northwestern. It was, and I wasn't even in his corner, but we wrestled a lot during the year, kind of like Connor and I did. We'd wrestle every day when it was a match day. But Andrew Nader was a 49-pounder for us. And his senior year in Michigan, I think he was either third or fourth in the state. The only time he placed in the state tournament. Then he gets to Northwestern. We have to wrestle him up at 57 because we had a good 49 that year. And then he ends up going down to 49. His sophomore year at the Big Ten tournament, he beat Lance Palmer, which is insane, right? He beats Lance Palmer. Somehow he doesn't get a wild card or an at-large bid. He finished sixth in the Big Ten. Third year in his third year in the starting lineup, and he loses in the round of 12 at NCAAs. And then his senior year, he's in his round of 12 match, and he's wrestling Mario Mason, who Mario Mason was the #1 overall recruit in the country his senior year. And Nader beats him, comes off the mat, and, you know, tears not in his eyes. He's like, I got another match. There was tears in my eyes. And I was like, Nader, do you know what that kid was ranked like in high school? And he's like, well, it doesn't really matter. I was like, well, you know, he was #1. He's like, yeah, I know that. He's like, doesn't matter now because it's, you know, 5 years later. And I was like, yeah. And I go, what do you think you were ranked in the nation? He's like, I don't know, like 200 something. I'm like, no, you were like 1,084.
And he beat him.
Yeah, it was just amazing. Then he wins his next match, like finished sixth in the country. Like those things with coaching, and let me be honest, like Matt Storniolo, who's now the head coach at Northwestern, he did a great job preparing Andrew, like, because they would wrestle multiple times a week. He had Jason Welsh as a workout partner. Like there's so many moving pieces, right? When something like that happens, but like that was just so like, you know, you have these moments where you're holding tears back, and I could go on forever. Like Priestson didn't win a national title, but he finished third his senior year, and for him to come back and do that, and he beat Robles, who he lost to the year before earlier in the tournament. Like, you know, those things are things you don't forget. And of course you remember the national champs and all that. And that's what the people see, right? But there's so many other stories.
Kevin Nordstrom, Coach Pariano is the man.
That he wrestled at VTech.
Yep. And he was, he and his brother are two of only 5 kids that were 5-time Florida State champs.
I love that about Florida. That you can wrestle more than just your freshman through senior year. Love it.
Yeah, I've had him on. I've had he and his brother on. They're unbelievable. Kevin, if you're watching, please share the interview through your platforms. Connor, please share through your platforms. Facebook likes to not allow me to do that, so I don't know why, but
they don't allow you.
Ever since I started this page, I'll share and then they'll stop me from sharing, and then I'll share. So I don't know if because I got a business page now or something, they're trying to regulate me. I don't know, but you know, when I was able to share it with the wrestling rooms, we were getting 2,000-3,000 views because I was sharing it with like Wrestlers Only and Wrestler Insider. Those guys are super nice with the Jim Thrall and Richard Jensen. They've been super helpful with me. I got to meet Richard. He was on here with me, and his story is just sick. It's unbelievable. As a recruiter, I want to ask you this question before I get into my 10 questions with you.
Oh boy.
How sick is it that a kid like Echemendia walks into Fargo and does what he did?
Oh, it was so cool. His story is so awesome. And what a humble kid, right? Like I watched that on Flow. Like you can't help but fall in love with that. And fell in love with the kid. Like he went through so much, and just the way that he's so humble, like it's amazing, and everybody's so excited to you know watch him do his thing next year, and yeah, those types of stories are amazing, and it's always been interesting to me. I was never able to do it when I was coaching in college. I was like, why don't we get some more Russians over here, Cubans, like on these college teams, right? Like, I mean, Oklahoma State did it years and years ago at heavyweight. But like, yeah, no, I think, you know, if a guy wants to come over here, get a better life, get a better education, they should be allowed to do that, you know, and I feel strongly about that.
That's crazy. And talk about, so I reached out to him on Instagram, and within like 30 seconds, he responded and he came on the
Yeah.
show. So I had him on the show a couple of weeks ago. We talked about 20 minutes. He, you know, he gave me the brief synopsis of everything. And then he talked a little bit about never wrestling Greco before. And he thought it was crazy. His coach wanted him to wrestle Greco, and he turns out to win it.
Yeah.
And then he speaks very highly of there's a Cuban gentleman that coaches somewhere up in Ohio that really helped him out and helped him make his decision. But man, do you think we'll see him on the mat this year, or you think it's going to be another season?
I mean, there might be a redshirt season. I don't know. It's going to be exactly what Ohio State thinks is best for him, and what he wants to do. I mean, in his latest interview, and I'll have to watch the one you did with him, but like, it's just amazing. Like watching his interview in Fargo, where he already spoke really awesome English, and now like he's adapting to the culture so quickly. I would guess that Ohio State would want to use him, you know, right away.
Yeah, it seems like a guy that you'd want to use, right? But I know there's always a process to college, I guess. And,
yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe a little bit of like bottom work or what have you, but I mean,
typically it's maturity, right? But if you can walk through 3 countries, through a jungle, spend 3 months in prison, and then go win a state championship and double Fargo, I think you've matured.
Yeah, I think he'd be all right.
He could probably make it on his own.
I think he would. I think it would be pretty darn good. And then, you know, the other thing in D1 more than probably the other levels is like it's just the weight class needs, like who slots in where, right? And if he could make 41, which to me seems like a monstrously big 41, and then Sasso is I heard a big 49. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be up to their coaching staff and see where it goes. But
yeah, I mean, I like Elijah Cleary too. This year he broke through, and he's a Florida guy, and he and his brother Travis are just unbelievable human beings. So.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. My dad was a college and high school coach, and he coached this guy, Gary Buffington, who is the biggest Ohio State wrestling fan ever. And when I was still in Chicago, he's like, hey, I'm in town for business. Let's go out to eat. And he was like, oh, I'm all excited about this Elijah Cleary. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. He's like, have you watched him wrestle? I'm like, no, I will. And then I watched him and I was like, yeah, he's pretty good. And like Gary just knows, this guy knows more about Ohio State wrestling than probably anybody but their coaching staff. I don't know. Like he's a huge fan.
That's awesome. And that's your home turf, right? That's where you're from, Ohio.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's just like, you don't know everything, right? Like I've heard of him, but I didn't watch him wrestle. And then he's like, check him out. And they had some good guys as his weight class, you know, and they're always getting challenged, right? At programs like Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, Minnesota, Oklahoma State. I mean, it's just great for the state.
That's awesome. All right, you ready?
I guess so.
All right, Chicago dog or New York dog?
Chicago. With no ketchup.
No ketchup. 32 or Fargo?
Fargo.
Chicago popcorn or movie popcorn?
I don't really eat either, so movie.
That caramel and cheese popcorn on the streets?
Movie.
Okay. Iron Man or the Beast?
Iron Man, all the way. Not because I'm from Ohio.
Yes. Chicago pizza or New York pizza?
New York. I do not like deep dish.
See, I kind of found out where you live, both sides of the planet there. All right, so you're up in the Northeast, and you went to college in Chicago. So do you go a Chicago beef, or in the Northeast, do you go beef on a weck?
Still Chicago beef.
Do you go, what's the national duels or the Disney duels?
National duels all the way.
All right, here we go. Here we go. We're doing good here. New York cheesecake or Buckeyes?
Well, I didn't go to Ohio State, so New York, New York.
The cheesecake? I didn't know if
Yeah.
you like the Buckeyes. I guess it's a candy in Ohio. I don't know.
It is. In my hometown, like we had Buckeye trees, and like I always found it interesting, like on football Saturdays, like all these people had Ohio State flags out, which is great for their school, right? But I was always like a little kid, and I was like, I'd be like going on a run or playing outside, football, whatever, soccer, and I'd be like, why are there all these Ohio State flags? Like it's not possible that my hometown of 17,000 people, like the whole families went to Ohio State, right? And I just wasn't used to that because like even at Northwestern, like there isn't that like huge fan base, you know. It's definitely growing, but like you would see as many like Iowa flags in Evanston and like Illinois flags, just because that was a very like a great area to live and all that. But yeah, in Ohio, like you didn't really have a choice.
Yeah, I would think the Buckeyes are more loved than the Bengals or the Browns.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
West Coast wrestling or East Coast wrestling?
Oh, that is super hard. So, all right, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. These are my top 5 wrestling states in order. Okay. Pennsylvania, Jersey, California, Ohio, Illinois. Okay.
So how close has Florida come to that, in your opinion?
I think when I look at it, I think some other really strong wrestling states are Missouri. Oklahoma's been strong. I see a big influx recently in Florida and Georgia. I actually wish Georgia didn't have, do they have 6 different state champs per weight?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think Florida and Georgia have picked up a lot of momentum. And then you see other states that have kind of plateaued a little bit. New York still produces great guys, but they've plateaued a little bit. And years ago, New York was like, in my opinion, a top 5 wrestling state. Yeah, I think Florida and Georgia are on the come up for sure.
Have they broke the top 10 yet?
I would say they're right on I would say Georgia, you're going to get mad at me for this. I'm going to say Georgia's about 9 or 10, and I would say Florida's like 11 or 12 right now.
Awesome. That's awesome. And before I have one more question here, but before I ask you that, I want to ask you, how far has the Knockout come as a national power?
In what regard?
As a tournament that is attracting great wrestling from around the nation and attracting great college recruiters.
I think it has, and I have a story, and I go off on these tangents. Is it the Prep Slam in Georgia?
I'm learning.
Okay, so there's this tournament in Georgia, and they actually get some Florida teams. They get South Carolina, they get Tennessee, they get North Carolina. And I was working with this guy, and he won a state title his junior year in Georgia. And he won the Prep Slam. Okay. And it has nothing to do with prep schools. It's just the name of the tournament. And we were already working with like Army, Navy, Campbell, Davidson, super smart kid, some other schools like in Georgia. And he wins this event. And I call him like 2 days later and I was like, hey, Joe, do you have new friends? And he's like, Drew, what are you talking about? I have the same friends I've had since I've been in 9th grade. I'm like, no, new friends, college coaches. And he goes, oh yeah, like Army, Navy. He's like Air Force, Maryland, Davidson, Campbell, like they all reached out to me. So like, yes, anytime there's an event like that continues to grow, college coaches take note of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like it's at least everybody said it's a big tournament, and I got to go to the finals this year. It was pretty awesome. All right, so up in the Northeast there, Niagara Falls, Canada side or USA side?
Oh man, you're gonna get me in trouble.
I prefer the Canada side, but
So do I.
that's me. There's things you can do on the Canadian side you can't do on the USA side, so I like it over there.
Yeah, I was up there with a couple wrestling buddies once, and this was years and years ago. But we just we had a great time, for sure.
Do you want to elaborate while we're recording? No.
No, it was interesting. It was a very mild bachelor party because the bachelorette party was in the same hotel. So like we ended up going to this little restaurant / bar and great like music, and the weather was awesome. Like we had a great time, and Canadians are just really nice people in general. Like
Yeah,
overly nice.
I really had a good time. I went up to Toronto too once for a couple of days, and those two places were amazing. Hey,
we actually went to Jason Welsh and Connor Beebe, both when they were post grads, so they were training with the Chicago Regional Training Center. We went up to Guelph for the Canadian Cup, and that was where Welsh wrestled Hassan Garcia, who's from Cuba but was a two-time Olympian for Canada, and then Connor actually won the tournament, beat a pretty good German in the finals. But like we went up there and it was great. It was a great experience. Like people were just super nice. Yeah, it was fun to go up there.
Hey, so before I let you go, any questions I should ask Ken Shurto next?
Yes. Ask him if he remembers whipping me around. We were in maybe Parkersburg, West Virginia, and ask him if he remembers like throwing me in a fireman's carry and just beating the tar out of me. Because I was probably like 6th or 7th grade. I knew who he was, and I was probably like, oh, he'll just play around with me or whatever. But he showed me that he showed me very quickly that he was an Olympian. Put it that way.
That's awesome, man. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, and please like and follow my page, World Wrestling Live. I'm trying to build it up. I only started it about 2 weeks ago, and I've added all the shows that I've had so far to it. I'm almost at 700 follows. I'm at 692. Please share the interview with all your friends in your platform. I'm also on YouTube. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm learning every day. I just do this and then I put it there and I'm figuring it out. So I finally ordered a green screen. So next week, maybe I'll be able to put like a sign up behind me. But it's kind of where I'm at. I think you're doing a great job, and you have some nice looking floors there, by the way. Oh yeah. Well, our house flooded a year ago, and we were out of the house for like 5 months. And I don't know if it was a blessing or not, but those are the floors that came
they look pretty nice. So
yeah,
I appreciate the time, Daniel, and I'd be happy to. We'll definitely be we'll be friends throughout this process, and probably give you a few more names of many more exciting people than me to talk to.
Yeah, please do it. And when you go on to share the page, my cell phone number is right there. So welcome to grab it. It's 414-1137, area code 407. So I know nobody out there is listening, but 407-414-1137. So feel free to text me anytime, call me anytime. When you're in town, let's have a beer.
I like myself some Florida, that's for sure.
All right, man, you take it easy.
All right, later.